Well, between the rain and the train, I hope you guys can hear me. So, got a Sunday work session, trying to get caught up and make some progress on things. And say rain, I mean, it's really wet out. So we're inside. Let's see what I'm dealing with here. So as far as I know, this is the factory bumper, and I can tell you why I think it's the factory bumper. Underneath the white paint was the same red anti-foul primer that Ford used on the underside of the truck and on the back of the cab. So it's the same red primer. That tells me that's just a little bit too coincidental for it to be you know, a bumper that someone else put on at one point in time. So I think it's the factory bumper. So I started today removing the paint. This thing had this silly thing. I don't know what it was for, what someone was trying to do. They had that welded on there on top. So I got that cut off and sort of cleaned up. It's not going to be perfect without some filler of some sort. But in my walking around and working, I've got a rust hole. Now I've used the cutoff wheel and I've widened it out, but this is some pretty thick steel and it's still pretty good. So I'm going to try and weld a patch. I may cut it a little bit bigger just to give me some extra space on getting to it, and it feels a little thin back in that corner. But I've got the thickest piece of metal I could find that's not underwater is the old header pipe, or the old pipe on the top end of the exhaust that I cut off. This is an original piece of steel that came with the truck that when we had the guy redo the exhaust on the truck, he left this on and welded his work to it. Well, I could just cut this off, but we saved it, and this is good and thick metal. So I think I'm going to try and split it open, hammer it out on the anvil, and see if I can get it to where I can cut a patch and weld it in. So we'll check in with y'all in a bit, see how it's done. Okay, so I was pretty pleased it didn't take long to get that guy, you know, laid out and pretty well flat, cut out and filleted and laid flat and everything. But it does give me a good opportunity to walk through something that isn't really talked about a lot because not a lot of guys are using this anymore. So it's a little hard to tell, but I can guarantee you from the texture on this and from the way some of these little edges look on here that as I was hammering this out, I stretched the metal just a little bit. And so you have to be careful with this. You don't really run into it with modern metals as much just because people really don't work it that much. Although because they're so thin, if they stretch a little bit, it really shows. But if you get, and I love this set from Martin, it was a really good set. The price has gone up a bunch since I bought them. But I was using just, you know, a big heavy claw hammer to do the bulk of the moving. Which is probably did most of the stretching as well. But then I've got this little flat-faced body hammer that I use to just a little light tapping. I mean, and the grip is just, you know, a finger or two so that it rocks a little bit as you drive it down. But if you do stretch a piece of metal a bunch and you need to fix it, that's what that waffle print is for. And so what this does is it stretches it a little bit more, and then you follow it with that and shrink those back together again. You hammer that all back together again. Basically, you kind of force stretch it a little bit, and then you bring it back down. Luckily, I didn't have to do any of that anywhere on the truck. If we did stretch something, we were able to compensate in other ways. But that's what that waffle print in your hammer and dolly set are. So if you're doing body work on these old thick metal trucks and cars, that's how you do that. Well, there's the patch welded back up. So what do you think of my weld job? To give you a hint to the answer, you answer a question with a question in this case, and you say, is piss poor hyphenated? But there's no holes. I've got it ground kind of smooth, and we'll get some primer mixed up and on here, and then probably a little coat of some mud, help cover that. So that you don't quite see all those warts. It doesn't look like a wart on the back of this thing. So 2 quick coats of body mud later, and I've got it. I just put a little bit of black rust converter rattle can kind of sealer almost on it, just to help make sure nothing rusts in the intervening period. And you can see I got some spots that are going to need some attention. So I'll probably do some more sanding on that once things have dried, and maybe rather than come back with more filler, it's small enough I might be able to do it with some glazing putty a little bit here and there. But pretty good coverage on it all, I think, once I get it done, and just a little bit more sanding. You can see I got a shadow line out there. I gotta sand that down a little better. A little bit more sanding on this, and it'll be ready for paint, for a white, and I'm gonna paint it white like the top. And if you look over there, you can see a difference as well. Look, tail lights are in, they're working, they're good to go. But I want to talk a little bit about another thing that I don't like about this with the American Auto Wire harness. So this is the factory connector that comes off of the tail light buckets. This one had been cut into and spliced with some solder some time ago, but if you didn't have that, even if you didn't have that and you still had the factory buckets there, you had to get it to work, you had to cut them off and splice the wires in to get it to work. Now on these, I could tell you the red side is the turn signal side of the wire setup. So you've got a park light and a turn signal, which the turn signal also gets engaged for your brake lights. So that's the red side, is the turn signal side. The black side is your parking light side. So for anyone still trying to do this the same way, but I don't like having to cut a factory push connector off and replace it with hardwired, they just wanted you to butt splice it, because they didn't send any more bullet connectors to do that. So I went and I bought my own. I just bought, auto parts store bullet connectors with tube bullets, because I want to be able to disconnect it if I need to troubleshoot some stuff. So I think it's all going to work. Things are looking all right. Any issues that I've had so far have proven to be either me doing something wrong, operator error type settings, or another failure somewhere along the lines. Like right now, I think my wiper switch, I finally got it working, but now the switch seems to have failed to the on position. So when I leave it wired, my wipers are always on. I don't think it has anything to do with the wiring harness. I think my switch is gone. It's old, and I think it's finally failed on me a little bit. But that being said, knowing what I know now, as I was saying, knowing what I know now, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't go with the American Auto Wire Update Series harness. I'd do everything I could to try and stay as stock as I could with a stock wiring harness with stock connectors, even if it means you got to keep your voltage regulator and a couple of other things, extra bolt-on things that hang on the radiator support and underneath the hood. Even if you have to keep all those extra stuff there, I think that's what I would do. And so if I ever do another one of these, heaven only knows, you never know. Even a mom, after they go through childbirth once, a couple of years later sometimes says, yeah, maybe I'll have another one, even after going through all of that. So maybe I'll have another one, and we'll do everything we can to keep it factory. But from what I've learned so far, I would not go back again with the American Auto Wire Classic Update Series for the 66 Ford. I wouldn't. Tell me in the comments or in other things what you're doing, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. But I've fought this thing enough and had to sift through the tiniest little details on the harness to make sure on the harness instructions to make sure I'm doing it right. That it's got me to the point where I've probably spent a total of, if I were to do it 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, I've probably spent 3 weeks rewiring this, just over the years, and you can look back at the history of my videos, how long I've been doing this. Granted, I've never really fully wired a car again, but I'm also not thick. I've wired houses, so it shouldn't be that hard, is I guess what I'm saying, is it shouldn't be that hard, but this one it seems to be. So, anyway, we're off and going, but the taillights are in, new bezels, they work, aces. So as far as that goes, I'm a happy but tired cookie. I've been going at this for 8 hours now non-stop, so it was a full Sunday. I'm about done. Good luck on your projects. Wish me luck on mine.